It's midday in Freetown. Good afternoon and welcome to the Podium. My name is Daphne Zainab Kamara. Quote for today comes from Nelson Mandela, the former South African leader, and it says, "Our human compassion binds us to one to the other, not in pity or patronizingly, but as human beings who have learned how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future." Well, coming up in this edition of the Podium, President Julius Maada Bio makes unannounced visits to Princess Christian Maternity Hospital and the Special Court in Sierra Leone. The proposed venue for the setting up of the Commission of the Inquiry is in a dilapidated state. UNICEF appoints Sierra Leonean-born girls champion Chenoba as gender discrimination and harassment leader. Ministry of Mines and Mineral Resources embarks on mineral sector reforms to university students. Well, all these issues and more, including your messages, which you can send to 088-373-504. This is the Podium coming to you live on SBC Television. Stay with us. First on the Podium this afternoon, Sierra Leonean-born global champion for girls' rights and education has been appointed by UNICEF to a high-level independent task force on workplace gender discrimination and harassment. Chenoba, co-founder of the Purposeful Productions, will be joining external leaders from a range of backgrounds, including the development, business and non-profit sectors, as well as experts in gender equality and human rights advocacy. Chenoba will be joining some leaders to review current practices at UNICEF and proffer recommendations to effectively and systematically prevent and address gender-related discrimination, harassment and abuse of power in the UNICEF workplace. Cheno is my studio guest. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Podium.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Now, this seems to be a new practice by UNICEF. What prompted this?
Well, as you know, the world is in the middle of a global reckoning. The idea that women and girls were treated essentially as second-class citizens, having second-class responsibilities around the world is becoming no longer acceptable. Particularly females have been harassed, sexually molested across the world, and institutions that are progressive, like UNICEF, which is an iconic institution, are seeking ways to be much more accountable, much more responsive, and much more progressive. So what UNICEF is doing with this announcement is it's appointed 10 of us, global experts, policy thinkers, activists, who are leaders in this field, to bring our expertise together. They are giving us an unprecedented access into everything that they have done, all complaints within the organization over the past years. And we're going to review all of that and come up with what we hope will be blueprint solutions to help not only UNICEF, but other international agencies around the world to say this is how you think about these issues.
Now, would your office be responsible just for workers of UNICEF?
Well, this task force has a limited scope in that our goal is to look at UNICEF's global practice. Okay. So we're going to be preferring solutions. But one of the things I've always said, and I've been saying since the announcement, is it's an opportunity for us as a country, Sierra Leone. Because, as I said, it's only 10 people around the world, and UNICEF has access to anybody they wanted. But to name me as a Sierra Leonean, to be involved in this, to bring my expertise, my background, it exposes me to all the technical details are going to come out of this. And hopefully these are things I can bring to not only my own institution, Purposeful, but also to our country, which, as you know, badly needs this kind of reckoning as well.
And now one would say most people are not, do not have the boldness to report on sexual harassment and abuses, and limiting it just to workers. We know that these expatriates come to some countries, especially Africa, and misuse girls, especially underage girls. What would your office do to stop this practice?
It's a major issue, and as I said, it starts in the home, it's in the office, it's in our political sphere. The idea that women are treated as second class, the idea, I mean, we have a rape culture, we have an abuse culture, and people with power, when they are not checked, will exercise that power, and females are used as the pawn in that game. So what we need to do, and what this task force will do, is look at this comprehensively. And as I said, it's not just about this task force, it's about ending and changing this culture that we have, not only in UNICEF, and UNICEF is a global leader, and they're already doing a lot of great things about this, but whatever recommendations we come up with, we hope, can be applied in other institutions as well.
Now, it took the UNICEF a long time, because we know the United Nations have this sexual exploitation and abuse program. Once I was in UNAMSL, it was established in 2007, and so why at this time?
That's a good question. As I said, there's a global movement happening. They call it the Me Too movement. Many people are coming forward to say that, you know, at the workplace, in professional circles, they have been abused, and their voices have not been heard. What UNICEF is doing is being proactive. The United Nations itself as an institution has been faced with a lot of scandals, including for peacekeeping missions. And as you know, even in Sierra Leone, there was widespread abuse and harassment of females. So what UNICEF is saying with this announcement is, we don't even want to do this internally. Okay. We want to call people who are experts, people who know about these issues. And as I said, I'm honored to be part of this, of this exclusive team, to look at this from an independent point of view, not only to name and shame or blame. That's not the goal of this. The goal of this is to say, what are our policies? How do we change? How do we become a better institution that can be responsive to everybody's needs in this organization, and where women will feel just as safe to walk in and they can realize their full potential without any threat. So
as being a Sierra Leonean on board this team, let's talk about your expertise. What would you be bringing on board?
What do I bring on board? That's a great question. Well, I have over 18 to 19 years experience, particularly focused on young people's rights. I started in Sierra Leone by founding the Children's Forum Network about 18 years ago, and I worked with our current presidential spokesman on that, Mr. Keketoma. We worked together on that. And since then, I've gone on to lead not only in this country, but also globally, particularly on issues related to education, girls' rights, women's rights, and youth advocacy. The United Nations Secretary General himself has appointed me twice to high-level steering groups, looking at global education around the world, helping to create the momentum that led to Malala winning the Nobel Peace Prize. As you know, I was the head and chaired that program in the United Nations. So my expertise and my background on this issue is that I bring not only a grassroots connection, a grassroots knowledge on this issue, but also I understand the issues particularly facing girls. I can also bring the voices of the workers in the global south, because a lot of the experts normally come from the global north, people in the western countries. But I work in this context. I spend a lot of time going into displaced camps, refugee camps around the world, listening to the concerns of people who have no access to power. I was a refugee myself. I lived in a refugee camp during the war in this country. So I bring a diverse range of experience, not only in terms of real life experience, but also real life expertise. Okay. And as you know, I currently run an international organization called Purposeful, and we focus exclusively on adolescent girls. Okay. So I bring that expertise and experience as well.
Okay, finally, before we go to another issue, you will be on this panel looking about taking a look at all of these things, providing solutions. Will there be penalties for culprits?
You know, UNICEF has its own internal processes that I cannot talk about, okay. And those policies and practices will take their own course. This is not about people coming up to complain. Okay. What we want to do, and what this committee is going to do, is to just provide solutions on how the institution can reform itself.
What would be the essence of such a move without people paying back?
Well, people will pay back, but as I said,
the trauma of being harassed, we know those things.
Absolutely, and UNICEF, again, I don't want to speak for UNICEF, but UNICEF has its own policies and programs in terms of how it deals with these issues, and if and when these issues come up, they will follow their own internal processes. What we will do is to look at it from a global perspective and say, in your institution all around the world, these are the things you can do to be an even better and more progressive organization.
So it's like guidelines. Okay, thank you very much.
And they will be enforced.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. He is Chen Oba, who has recently been appointed by UNICEF to a high-level independent task force to work on workplace gender discrimination and harassment. Well, for another issue this afternoon, President Julius Maada Bio made an unannounced visit to the Princess Christian Maternity Hospital at Frabe Road as part of his routine visit to ministries, departments and agencies to ensure government workers report on time. The cottage is a tertiary hospital to take care of women and children. During the visit of the president, he found out some senior personnel were not on time to work and have recommended strict disciplinary action. And also, the president paid a visit to the special court premises to assess the building, as government is planning to host the proposed commission of inquiry court at the special court. Well, before we go to our guests in the studios, let's just take a look at the president's visit to both these places.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah, how are you? You're the looker, right? No, the words and the videos.
You have the night, the late, the early morning, such a beautiful baby.
Thank you very much for that. Lucky woman.
Sorry for the lights.
How are you? Thank you for being on time. Thank you. I challenge you that when I come up to the salon, the only way that I do is to I say 8:30, you don't come to the 8:30. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning.
Yearly operations basis of the statement but the other thing is when we get space, we occupy this area for them to be there. Also, like they pull up Ghana. So this room now we put a main propose deliveries. Okay, there will be serial sections. For most of this particular one, I call it purely for like things. And
Good head, eh? Good head of the
what sister?
What is that? Podium.
Now the night doesn't go less than can. But what the sister would they chat? You know, guys. That's it.
Another time for me there. Don't pass. 8:30. How are you going to do all the way? Good morning. So ready this time? So how long are you going to do this for that? To tell sister, say, my sister? So I was here. At 8:30 and do not know. And the doctor, the order. And you do a very critical job for me. Okay.
Thank you.
Which one meets your name?
Well, we don't try for the
They're talking and talking.
But what I want to show is the metric system. That one. So they can sign.
They want to go, why you get some plenty? But they have to come here.
They have to come here and sign. Then what they want. So that is good. So like that, they will just come somebody like this. So I made a metric taking that to themselves.
So do you draw the line?
Yes, sir.
At what time?
9 o'clock, I think.
9? Is it not 8:30?
8:30.
So it looks like you want to keep a different time? But it seems you are keeping a different time here.
Because of because of transportation problem.
That's not an excuse.
Then everybody will believe
That's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. So we are here by 7 o'clock. Yeah, but so therefore that's not an
So
excuse.
you have to make sure everybody keeps to that time. This is a critical job. She's here.
Yes.
What is transportation carry? So that's in our business. I am the deputy. Good morning. How are you? Thank you. Assistant. Okay. She went to the ministry.
The metro.
She
told me when she came here and I was saying she took permission.
Oh, she was here?
Yes, and she's going to the ministry.
Okay.
Okay, just came to say thank you for the good work that you're doing.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Continue to work. Let's make Israel in a better place.
I love the fact
Well, that was the President, Julius Maada Bio, on an unannounced visit to the Princess Christian Maternity Hospital at Frabe Road, commonly called Cottage. Well, in the studio to talk more on this, I have the Press Secretary, Yusuf Repeto Masandi. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you very much for having me.
We saw in the video footage the President going through the register, which we all know is archaic. It's because I may come early and sign for someone else. Let's talk about what was found out in all of those.
Well, first, let me start by congratulating my brother showing up for his appointment to UNICEF. I think it would be a very added value to our country, and we're proud of him, and best wishes to him, and all the best as well. This morning, obviously, like, it's a continuation of what the president does, which just basically means that he's not just confined to chairs and desks at State House. He wants to talk to people, ordinary people, and see how they feel about service delivery in the country. And that is why this morning, remember the first time when we published about the timing to go to work, we went to E building where obviously we made an announced visit. So they wanted to do two things. One, to check the facilities at the PCMH, and also make sure that people are complying with the executive order about people going to work on time. When we went, it was unannounced, so you could understand that all the nurses and the doctors, were just taken aback. But the good thing as well was that he looked at the structure of the facilities, and then we were taking a conducted tour by the doctors and also the nurses. But we went first to the maternity area where we deal with pregnant women, and also we saw kids, the premature section. But I think that we had two things I need to pick up on. The firstly was when we went to the premature section. That was the section, according to the nurse, that is the only premature area we have in the Western area. Yes, but it's so crowded, it's so small. So what they spoke about was that they wanted an expansion. And the president told them obviously that something that we can work on. They just need them to do it formally and then come back, and then we can get back into response.
So what about equipment, the incubators?
Well, I mean, equipment was not too bad. It was the expansion because I think it was a bit overcrowded. And for you to have just that one unit, the whole of Western area, I think that was something that it was a wake-up call. That's why these meetings are very important. But also it was about even the structure, I mean, some of the ceilings, I mean, falling off, I mean, the paintings here and there. But also, in terms of the timing to go to work, I mean, on the whole, I think most of the nurses, the doctors were in time, which I think is something as well the president said, that people are very willing to embrace the change, because sometimes what is happening that we concentrate too much on the negative and leave the positive out. So the positive thing is many people were in time to work. The president was very impressed. In fact, in some of the wards that he went to, he congratulated the nurses, praised them for their hard work and then for them to continue. But there was also another unfortunate issue at the domiciliary ward we went to, and the matron who was in charge, she had not come to work on time. So when the president asked for who was in charge, and then they said it was the matron was not in charge, and then he asked the doctor why was she not at work at that time. The doctor said it was transportation, but the president said, "But I mean, we can't use lazy excuses, not to comply with directives." And he also, used many of the nurses around as examples, because there was a lady who was sitting at the desk, and then the president said to the doctor, "But look at this lady. She comes at the same time. She left early, but she's here. So therefore, we should not condone lazy excuses. People have to be at work on time, and that is what should happen." Because also when I think it was probed further, he also said, I think, on the ledgers, he said they normally draw lines at 9 o'clock, and the president joked, "So do you have different times to my time?" And then immediately he knew the president was very serious, and then he said, "No, sir." He said, "We'll start doing at 8:30. But what it shows is a president who is very passionate about service delivery. Because remember, the health is a very critical sector. Because remember, let's put it into context. If you have, for instance, an emergency, someone coming around about 8 o'clock, and you only had one nurse who was meant to be there and the person is not there, then that is a threat and a risk to that person's life.
Sure.
You know, so issues like that are taken very, very seriously. And we also spoke about the issue about because when we went to the domiciliary ward, we met about 10 ledgers where people will just, when they come in, they sign in. And then they said, why don't we just change the system by having clock in and clock out system? But it's about how do we make sure that we leave the analog age and try to progress in terms of service delivery.
So that's where the government comes in.
Well, in fact, when the president was when he finished his tour and he was interviewed by various press men and women that were there, and then they asked him about his responses, and it was very positive. Firstly, he praised and congratulated many of the staff, and then obviously because they are working under extreme and difficult challenging circumstances, so we have to praise them for that. But also he said that he has seen the challenges, and therefore as a government we will try and see what we can do to make sure we ameliorate the problems that are there.
And talking about challenges, what were some of them? Because you mentioned the structure, like the ceilings that were dilapidated and all of this. Let's talk about his intervention.
Well, they spoke one obviously about the issue about infrastructure, so in terms of equipment and of staffing. So the president actually did say to them and promised them that we would look into that and see how we can obviously have more trained nurses and doctors so that they can help them. Because remember, I mean, the maternity and then the children's wards, they are together in there, and it's very critical in terms of how do we move forward to, for instance, reduce the infant mortality rate. How do we move forward to give children better foundation, you know, when they are sick, you know. The challenges there, obviously, like President said, as a government we are concerned. That is why he left State House. He wanted to go and see for himself. Because remember they used to say in our local parlance that the pan eye. But we don't believe in that slogan. The pan needs to go and hear it for himself. He needs to go and talk to people. So he spoke to nurses, he spoke to doctors, he spoke to the patients as well. They had a very massive interaction. In fact, when we went to the children's section, we had loads of volunteers who were there to volunteer. He spoke to them, he praised them for the service they do. Because sometimes, I mean, we have heroes and heroines behind the scene, people we don't know about. So it's always good that the president comes in contact with these ordinary people who give so much to humanity for them to know that they are doing extremely well.
So what about the availability of drugs? Because there may be thousands of personnel to run an institution, but if the drugs are not available to take care of the patients, it won't be that effective.
That's also another concern. Because remember, we had a free health that was launched some time back. We also had a lot of challenges in terms of, you know, drugs getting missing and many things that were actually not in the interest of people who are the beneficiaries. So in fact, when we finished, when we were coming out, President obviously worked with the doctor and then the supervisor. So what he said to them was that they have to put together things that obviously that we can look into and then coordinate with the office of the chief minister, so at least we can have a follow-up. Because we have to remember, it's not just President going to visit. You know, it has to be meaningful. We have to get results, we have to get impact, you know. So I think what was really important this morning was the fact that many nurses complied. They came to work in time with the doctors as well. And those obviously who fell foul of the directive, you know, the President was very strict, he was very stern, and he said to them that action should be taken.
So what would happen to them?
Well, obviously, we'll progress with that because
because we know for the first time they'll say it's pardonable, but if it continues to happen, and then the action comes in.
Well, I mean, the public service and also the civil service, they have their own procedures, how they manage issues like that. You know, what we are saying is that a directive was given and everybody should comply. If you don't comply, action should be taken.
Okay. So what would be the most immediate area that the president would intervene in after this visit to the hospital? Because we know it was refurbished by the former president Amati Jankaba, and so many other efforts have been made, but it's still not up to standard, being the principal hospital, maternity hospital in the country.
I mean, I was just going to say that it was in May 2006 when it was reopened, both with Connaught as well, you know. But for what we saw this morning, I think it's in a very bad condition and bad shape. You know, but what was agreed was that both the doctors and then the nurses, I mean, they are meant to put things in place and then to coordinate with the office of the chief minister who will follow up. And therefore, whatever government can do interventions, whether it's short-term, medium-term, or long-term plan, and then we can discuss that. But we wait for them for them as the institution, for them to come to us and then say, okay, these are the challenges, and therefore how do we move on to that.
So would there be all the structures, because we know, like you mentioned, the overcrowding at that particular units, the premature units that you mentioned, and we know these hospitals have been in existence for so long, and it's not even able to cater for the needs of people in Freetown, needless to talk of referrals for the provinces and all. Would that be?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things which obviously have been considered by the government.
All the hospitals.
There are a lot of things which have been considered by the government. I also know that there are also projects, in fact, which hospitals are going to be built, you know, with projects going on at the Ministry of Health as I speak to you. But what is really important is to make sure, because when we went to, in fact, the premature section, the nurse that we met spoke about a land, I think that was just adjacent, or I think in the locality, where I think they are meant to expand that. Okay. But President asked them, so what was the update and the progress? And then they said, I think they are trying to for them to get the land, because I think the land is owned by a bishop. Okay. You know, but what President said was whatever governments can do to make sure that we expand, I think we'll be very willing to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Continue to stay with us in the program. He is the Press Secretary, Yusuf Kekatoma Sandi, who accompanied the President on his visit to the PCMH Hospital at Frabe Road. And also in the studios this afternoon, we have the Minister of Information and Communications, Mohammed Rado Soare, who is here to talk more on the President's on-the-spot visit to the special court premises, which we know the government is intending to hold the Commission of Inquiry. Good afternoon, Mr. Minister. Welcome to the podium.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, viewers and listeners. It's a pleasure being here.
As we speak, what's the status of the structure of the Special Court of Sierra Leone?
Let me also take a cue from my brother and colleague to congratulate SIBA. I mean, you've done us proud. You've kept flying the national flag very high. We urge you to continue to do it, and be sure we will continue to support you. The visit to the special court. But just before I come there, you know, let me piggyback on a few things he mentioned.
Okay,
yeah, Mr. Bar mentioned, yeah.
Harassment and discrimination.
Yeah, harassment and discrimination, particularly against women in the workplace, especially. I mean, this is, you know, something we have had to live with as a country for the longest time. We have had our women in careers, in positions of trust. They have continued to suffer in silence at the hands of very, very, very rapacious men who take advantage of unequal power relations to make unwelcome sexual and other advances to them. They tag recruitment into jobs, they tag promotions and others to that kind of thing. As a government, we associate ourselves with your clarion call. It is in light of this that we particularly spoke about instituting an ethics office at State House, and by extension to all MDAs, so that we can have clear blue water lines between what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, particularly when it comes to dealing with the opposite sex. In the private sector, I mean, you have regulations like this there. You have codes of ethics, you know, governing relations between the opposite sex. So I see no reason why we must not have it in government.
And I mean, also, just to come in, Mr. Minister, we know that all of these rules and regulations, ethics, they exist, but the effectiveness of them is not seen in Sierra Leone.
That is not true. They do, and they are effective. I presided over the termination of an expert employee in London mining because he was ethically compromised. He took undue advantage of a Sierra Leonean intern, was entrusted in his care to show the ropes of the job. But unfortunately, he crossed the red line, and I had to stand up to ensure that he was expelled. Yes, we terminated his contract. So all we are saying, government too should grab it, should emulate that good example. We should institute these things in ministries, departments, and agencies. I've consulted with a few government departments, and I've made proposals like this before, right? And I'm sure it works very much in those institutions. Nothing stops us doing it. Yeah. I wonder if you have a sexual discrimination policy here in the SLBC. That is the way to go. Modern societies are built on those solid foundations of, you know, fairness, of respect for people's rights, as exemplified in their sexual preferences, and the nature of advances people get to.
And also, Minister, most times these complaints are made, but it will be the word of the staff, the female, against the male, who is the boss. Because sometimes those in the disciplinary panel would ask, what's the evidence? And most times you may not be able to record all of these.
Okay.
And what yardstick will they use
Let
to
me
make
see.
sure that you're saying the truth?
You know, it starts right from the definition. There is an acceptable global definition for sexual harassment, for example. You're talking about express or overt, unwelcome sexual, it could be by SMS, text messages, as long as it's not welcome. It could be an unholy touch, an unwelcome touch, it could be by explicit sexual messages, pornography, all of these things, they are acceptable definitions, right? And there are clear procedures, reporting, and various other ways to prove it. So because you don't have rules, there are no regulations, that is why you think proving it is impossible. You can prove it anything.
So now that you've
depending on the
shown that
instruments
you are passionate about this, so what would be your input?
I am a government minister. This government is very concerned not only about doing businesses correctly, we're also concerned about preserving the dignity of our women, our people in their various places of work. If a sexual harassment complaint meets me in any of the institutions I lead, trust me, I'll proceed to the very last. That is not something I'll gloss over. Okay. I want my daughter, Moji, to grow up in a Sierra Leone where she will be able to realize her fullest potentials, not scuttled by some Mako man who cannot see a scat pass by.
Thank you very much. And also, let's go now to
special court now.
Yes,
special court now.
Yes, what's the status?
You know, the special court's visit today by His Excellency is probably one of the very best things that happened to the justice sector in a long time. What I saw today, this was an edifice built in 2002, yes, refurbished in 2006, handed over to government with the, after the close of sessions about 2013, right?
Yes.
Right. What I saw today was a fine example, an excellent example of a serious assault on the very heart of justice. I mean, this was a court built with millions of other people's taxpayers' money, right? We complain overcrowding in courts. We complain we don't have proper and decorous places where court sittings can hold, right? And yet we have such a massive edifice, complete with furnishing, you know, central cooling systems, mics all over the place, high intensive security, you know, courtrooms, and we have presided over the complete decomposition of the special court at the seams, at the very seams, the very heart, you know, with cockroaches mailing all over the place, with, you know, some of the structures physically falling apart. It's a crying shame. So all of these things we do as a government is just sloganeering. We make lip service commitments. How dare you preside over such a monumental investment, right? So it's a shame that this government, that government, the previous government, the government of Sierra Leone, presided over, you know, wrecking what could otherwise have been, you know, an edifice of international admiration. Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Speaking to the Attorney General, Minister of Justice, she did observe part of, you know, there were various proposals when the special court was drawing to a close, including making it an international law school where people from across the world could come, where you could have sittings here from the Arusha Court, the International Court of Justice, and that kind of thing. But incidentally, there was a far stronger point, a compelling reason. Let us hand it over to the government of Sierra Leone to use as, you know, an auxiliary court. Today, that is collapsed. It's very, very devastating, you know. I saw
what
that.
Would you say is responsible for this collapse? Is it because it houses the female inmates?
No. The reason for its collapse is because we do not have a maintenance culture, and the regime before this one never treated the issues of justice and rule of law seriously. That is why I mentioned it is an attack on the very heart of our justice delivery system. Because, look, we complain you have been to courts. You see how cramped and overcrowded they are. You have a state-of-the-art court handed over to you. 2013. Spink and spank. Right? Fully functional. Central air conditioning units, mics, high security, all of that. And today, it's just a shadow of itself. Complete ruin, complete dilapidation. That is unacceptable. All the more reason why people don't treat us seriously as a country. These are other people's taxpayers' money.
Yes. Well, and what is
Can
it?
I just add something?
Okay.
I think the minister has been very generous to the past government. I mean, what we went, I mean, this was an institution which was given back in 2013
Yes.
with about 200 vehicles. 200 vehicles. As I speak to you, everything is gone. It's as bad as that. But it's not only that. I mean, the special court, what we saw today,
Vehicles gone to where?
200 vehicles. I mean, they were
Nobody
missing,
to account
missing,
for them.
A
disappeared.
whole lot of them personalized
Missing,
now.
disappeared. They were given with laptops, with hardware, a lot of them, everything is gone. But it's not only the special court. When we took up even at State House, the place was vandalized, it was looted. People looted even televisions on the walls. Telephones, they were looted. So I mean, it's sad. It's very, very sad. So I think it's just part of what we are saying as a government, that what we have inherited is so challenging, whether it's in terms of infrastructure, in terms of buildings, you know. So lots and lots of work have to be done to it. Lots of work. So we think that it was, in fact, in the press release I had in December 2013, when in fact initially what was happening was that they wanted the special court to be used as the Supreme Court.
Okay.
But it was never used. It became so dilapidated. I mean, we went in, I mean, when you walk, you could easily think that
but
you're almost
don't
going
you
to fall.
think it's because it's not being in use? That's what caused it.
But that's the whole point.
You see.
It's about, Minister said, about maintenance culture.
Yeah, because if they were using it, someone would have thought of repairing this section, doing all sorts of maintenance. Don't you think so?
SLBC is in use, but don't we see it falling apart at the seams?
But where some parts are being refurbished.
Okay,
and maintained.
as CEO.
Because I was going to say, this was an institution which the international community and the government spent millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
For that to be in that state, when they handed that over, it was 2013. And then it was unkept, abandoned, neglected, and even destroyed and vandalized. I mean, that's serious. That's serious. So what the president did this morning was just to make sure that we visited the place to look at the site and see, you know, what we can do. But it's in a very bad shape. And the minister spoke about that, about the commission of inquiry, you know. In fact, from what the AG said, because it's in so much in bad shape, we'll be spending billions of loans to refurbish that.
So
as a
does
result
that
of
mean
that,
there will be the commission of inquiry will not hold?
Definitely not.
Definitely not only.
It will be only after the special court has been refurbished.
Well, we'll look at alternative ideas.
Ideas,
This is a big country.
yes,
There are opportunities other places. But we cannot hold the inquiries there because the structure is in advanced stage of ruin and dilapidation.
So,
It's sad and
what's
sickening.
your immediate plan of action?
Well, you know, like we say, this country has serious and fundamental problems.
Okay.
I was going to challenge SLBC now to produce for us footages of the handing over ceremony of this structure in 2013.
Yeah.
And this is a challenge I'm doing on air. I'm going to involve the Director General because this was what I expected. Intersperse it with what currently exists so that they say ocular demonstration needs no proof. Let the people out there see it. But where is the archives department? I am challenging.
It was burnt down.
But this happened 2013. Nothing has been born
but
after 2013.
We would have.
So this is a challenge I'm throwing up.
We know the conditions, the special court.
The other people there don't know it. They want to see what it was like when it was refurbished and handed over in 2013. We want to see footages of that side by side.
Yes.
So this is a challenge for the benefit of our viewers and listeners. This is the only way we'll progress this country.
Yeah, because you have a duty, like the minister said, to make sure people are well informed.
Sure,
so at least people will learn from it.
We will. We will
That's
bring
very
it up. We
important.
will bring it up and continue to stay with us. Thank you so much. And for a final issue this afternoon, the Deputy Minister of Mines and Mineral Resources, Evelyn Blackie, has told lecturers and students of the Jala University that the reason for the mineral sector reforms is to enhance transparency, accountability, and to transform the sector as an engine of economic growth. She was speaking during a seminar on mineral sector reforms at Jala University, Jala campus, to get inputs into the reform process. Well, Daniel Bondo is the Minerals Policy Advisor, Ministry of Mines and Mineral Resources. Good afternoon and welcome to the podium.
Good afternoon and thanks for having me.
Is it a normal practice for the ministry to involve students to make input into such reforms and processes?
Not that I know of at all.
So why did you decide to bring them on board?
Well, The reason is to support the commitment made by His Excellency the President, retired Brigadier Julius Madabio, about optimizing the benefits that we can get from the mineral sector, to ensure that we implement the local content policy and the local content act, and ensure that Sierra Leonean citizens have the requisite skills needed to take advantage of the jobs that the mineral sector provides. When you talk about the mining sector, most people think you have to be a geologist or a mining engineer to have a role in the mineral sector. That's not true. I am not a geologist. I am not a mining engineer. Everybody has a role to play in the mining sector. So, as a part of government's commitment to ensure that Sierra Leoneans do take opportunities of jobs that the mining sector creates, we want to create the link between what we do at the Ministry of Mines and academic institutions who have the primary responsibility of developing the human capital in this country. We want to see how we can create opportunities for students to start to develop interest in writing papers, either term papers or theses or dissertations on issues related to minerals policy development. We want to see how the curriculum of these universities fit the skill set that mining companies would need. There is complaint out there that mining companies bring in foreign experts for jobs such as drivers or welders or carpenters. But the truth of the matter is, we sometimes lack the requisite skills in country to do what mining companies want to do. And it is the job of the universities to turn out people with the skill set that will be required by them. So as the ministry is responsible for policy formulation, we want to ensure that we work with universities to get people, our young graduates, to have the skills that we need. So this is the first of the
Is it that
meetings.
you are trying to include some of your policies into the curriculum?
Well, it's not about including the policies into the curriculum, but seeing the universities as part of policy formulation processes. Okay. We want to be as inclusive as we possibly can. The Minister of Mines himself, Dr. Manye, an academic professor, is very much passionate about this, to ensure that we work with the university to not only contribute to policy formulation, but to also help us in achieving what we've always been crying about, jobs for our young people, and removing the excuse from mining companies that, no, we don't have the skill set in the country, that is why we are bringing in the experts.
So what input did you get from the students?
Oh, it was really interesting. Students, for the very first time, because this was the very first time for the ministry to engage academic institutions, and they were really happy with the engagement, with the meetings that the topics that we discussed at the meeting, and were able to show the links between bad policies of the past and what the ministry wants to do going forward. And it was not just Jala University, we were at Farabi College as well, where students in the Peace and Conflict Department, for example, were able to realize that they have a role in mineral sector policy formulation. Students, economists, for example, mining engineers, of course, sociologists, political scientists, that they all have roles to play in mineral policy formulation. So going forward, we want to make sure that this partnership continues, and we are working with the lecturers and as well as the students in increasing their capacity in this regard.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel Gondo, the Minerals Policy Advisor in the Ministry of Mines and Mineral Resources. And over to you again, Chenoba. Now that you've heard what the Minister and the Press Secretary have said, they are passionate about your work. How would you use your work in UNICEF to help in Sierra Leone formulating some of these things that you would be doing?
I have to say everything I had them speak about was music to my ears. And I'm not surprised because I grew up with Keke Toma, and the minister is someone I've always looked up to growing up as well as a young man in this country. They are two of the brightest lights in our galaxy, as I would say. I moved back to this country about 2.5 weeks ago. I've lived in the United States for 12 years. In that time, as I've said, I've been honored to do many things. The reason why I did, partly, is because I believe in this country, and I believe that we all need to put our hands on deck to change this country. What the minister was alluding to is that we have a culture, we have deep-seated problems. Even everything they were talking about, it's a culture of the lack of maintenance, the culture of abuse of power. These are all aspects to that, and that's what also leads to gender discrimination, sexual abuse. It's the idea that when you have power, you have impunity. You can do whatever you do and just get away with it. So hear him say that and to hear the commitment at this high level gives me great comfort. And I'm really hopeful that together with my organization, Purposeful, and other experts that we have in this country, people like him who have experience as well in dealing with this issue, we can come together and begin to lay a solid foundation. You know, we've been independent for a long time now. It's about time that this country can stand up and speak up boldly around the world and say, not only are we different, but we're actually doing things differently. We're laying a foundation that we will treat everyone in this country, males as well as females, with the rights, with the respect, and the dignity that we all deserve. And I'm excited for that prospect.
Okay, thank you very much. And over to you, Yusuf Keketoma Sandi, the Press Secretary. What would be government's intervention in ensuring that Sierra Leone grab this maintenance culture that you are up against? Because if that had been done, we would not find these institutions in this state.
Well, firstly, I think our government will have to lead by example. That's very important, and we have to make sure that it's just that culture of people who don't care about government's property. But when I think government fails to take action or neglect government property, then it becomes a very serious issue. Like I was saying, it was not only even in the State House. Even when we went to the lodge where the former president used to be, now some huge work is going there. Even the same place, it was like massive looting. Telephones were gone, televisions were gone. So it is part of all syndicates, I think, which was part of what we inherited, and it was sad because these were government property, and these were things which I think it goes beyond just one government. So we thought, what would have united, what only just an economy was broke, but also institutions and buildings and structures which are in a very bad state, and I think that's sad. So what we have to do as a government are very key. One, we'll make sure we lead by example. Maintenance culture. I mean, the minister would say it. The access to information used to be housed in a private entity. Mm-hmm. Now they are going to samples, and that will be saving the government $30,000 per year. So that is what we'll be doing. Because it is only when we make sure that we maintenance our government social and government buildings. PTC report when it came out, lots of the money that government is wasting is on private property. So we have to make sure that we publish government building and property and make sure that we move government institutions, development apparatus to occupy those buildings. It's all when they occupy them it becomes a good use. So I think we'll lead by example. We'll make sure that we have a maintenance regime in place that would have actions that will be taken when things go wrong.
Okay. Minister, would there be an investigation as to who would account for what is missing in the special courts?
For me, anything that promotes greater accountability, anything that promotes transparency is good. It's worth pursuing. We have to lay a foundation to begin the rebirth of our country. We have had 57 years of missed opportunities. We should not continue that. I mean, we will not be surprised when they begin to hide under the veneer of witch hunt and all of that. But that's the new game in town. But it should not deter us. We are a determined government. we will do anything and everything that will ensure that whoever has shortchanged this country accounts for that. That's the only way to go.
And so when will we see the start of the Commission of Inquiry?
Well, the Commission
and
is...
the new venue, because for now the Special Court...
The Attorney General is currently looking at alternative venues for the sittings of the commissions. Other finishing touches are being put to arrangements, but I take comfort in the fact that every arrangement is in advanced stage. The commission will start in earnest. So our job in coming days and weeks will be to take this commission, the work, the rationale to the doorsteps of every Sierra Leonean in every village, so that we don't give a field day to those who are describing it as a witch hunt. I'm aware that even in the midst of all these descriptions, that some people who served in the previous regime have reached out to those in authority asking for out-of-court settlements with commitments to pay monies unlawfully acquired. I know what I'm saying. This is fact. That's for the competent authorities to decide. Okay. But I'm privy to this information that some have made overtures to people in government so that they can settle their own matters out of court. They can, you know, do the necessary
But that's the aim, to be accountable.
Well, sometimes, depending on the nature of the crime, we also want the next generation of Sierra Leoneans to learn that being in government does not bestow life and death powers onto you.
So you can still pay back and then go to jail.
That message is more so for us than those who have left government.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to sign a commitment on behalf of government, just remember that even after 1 million years, there will be another government transition team. That is what is going to keep us on our toes to ensure that we deliver the best deal for Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much. Well, this has been the podium. Many thanks to my studio guests for being part of the program. Our quote for today came from Nelson Mandela, the former South African leader, and it says, "Our human compassion binds us the one to the other, not in pity or patronizingly, but as human beings who have learned how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future." Well, many thanks to my producer, Hassan Mataba. My name is Daphne Zainab Kamara. The podium returns tomorrow, same time with Ask Me Back.
Here's good news to warm your hearts and cheer you up. Veronique's Movies Production, in collaboration with the Ministry of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, presents Ningiwo, a never-to-be-forgotten traditional epic movie, premiering at the iconic Miata Conference Center, UU Building, Brookfield, Freetown. Date, Saturday 22nd September 2018, time 8 p.m. prompt. Come and be part of history and see our cultural heritage at its best. Ningiwo, Ningiwo, starring Honorable Veronica Kadisise, Shaka Kone, Fatih Sharif, Al-Idris Kamara, aka Demo, Mariama Kamara, Selena Johnson Cole, Salimatu Kamara, Philippa Nahas, and a host of top-ranking actors. Ningiwo, a must-watch movie blockbuster. See you there.
The mega don't come near, but soft drink business not alone. The soft drink them, they make you feel extraordinary, exciting, enjoy, and full with confidence. When you drink Mega Grapes, Tip Top, Cola, Apple Cider, Lemon, Fresh Up, Energy, Malt and Squeeze, you go feel the luxury of life. Mega Cola drink them, good for you and the family. We cheap and they make life easy for we customer them. Come now we factory, na 50 by Burego Chelkisi na Fritong. Or if you want for buy Boku, for sell back and make Boku profit, call me na 076 603 220.
Don't forget,
Mega Cola, the Mega Dawn, the game changer.
Mega Cola.
Making the difference.